Good afternoon, all. This is Dana Ortiz and Dr. James Rini for Behind the Curtain of Letting Destiny Deliver. And we're going to talk about the things that plague us and have questions about with his book, and he's going to explain them all. So, Dr. James Rini is a psychologist for over 46 years and also educator. I, Dana Ortiz, am a retired Seminole County Sheriff's Deputy Sergeant, actually, for over 26 years. Dr. Rini, is there anything that you would like to add for the listeners? No? Okay. All right. So, Letting Destiny Deliver is this amazing book. We have it in digital form on Amazon, right? And it is also audio. And you have the audio on your YouTube channel. Some of the things that I had questions about, and I think others also have questions about, is what inspired you to develop this informational technology?
Well, it's twofold. In my dissertation, I did research on how to enhance academic performance when students were able to use both their conscious and unconscious mind in their learning process. And once I finished that, I wanted to continue a similar task, but I thought I would do one where I could teach people how to understand and use their conscious and unconscious minds for mental health and happiness.
I love that, because we all want to be happy, but we're not always all happy, right? So you have been an educator and psychotherapist, that would be accurate, okay, for 46 years now, right?
Correct.
Almost as long as I've been, or actually longer than I've been alive. And how does your experience shape your approach to self-health?
Well, I think it affects it entirely, because that experience has given me the blessing of getting into people's private lives on so many levels and seeing family and couples and individuals day after day, year after year, looking for an answer to their problems, to finding joy in life again, has taught me so much. You know, I get a lot of therapy by doing therapy because I learned so much.
I love that. And I think it's really important for not only listeners, but clients to know that it's not just one way. It really is two ways. And I know this from my own experiences in law enforcement. There's been so many times where I've helped individuals, but they were also helping me in the process. And it's like this journey that you go on together. So I want to move on a little bit. And part of the title talks about Letting Destiny Deliver is that it's a drug-free prescription, right? It's your prescription and it's drug-free. Why have you chosen drug-free as the prescription, especially this day and age when everything is so readily available?
Because people struggle from natural causes in the way that people are educated and oriented to be in the world is in direct defiance of who they are. And by that I mean we are all individuals and have individual quests and challenges in our lives. And the way we're educated and society wants us to be is the same, uniform. And so that's very contrary to mental health. And drugs don't solve that problem. All they do is allow you to be more comfortable with your problem.
I can agree with you more 100%. So whether it's family members or friends, coworkers, I can barely think of right now any individual that I know of that either hasn't been on medication or medicated for some type of anxiety, some type of depression, something of that nature, and they're on the medication. Everybody talks about Xanax, and it makes an individual uniform, right? It masks these things. So since we know that many individuals are under a doctor's care, for people who are currently under medical care and taking prescribed medications, how do you envision letting destiny deliver, supporting their journey?
Because it's a roadmap full of pathways to get to where they're back in touch with their own unique human nature, which for all of us is nature that exists within us as well as it exists outside of us.
When you were saying nature within us, what does that mean?
It's Mother Nature is in each one of us as part of that pattern of being human. We have a self, a unique self, a genetic code that has to interact with the world and somehow fulfill itself.
I love that. And in your book, you talk about destiny, right? And you give this roadmap on how to let this happen. And we also have free will. But this can be confusing to individuals, and it has been confusing to me as well. If destiny, you think, okay, well, everything's set in stone, then why do I even try, right? But no, it's different than that. So how does destiny and free will interact?
Good question, and it rides piggyback on the answer I just gave you. Our genetic code is our destiny. Whether we listen to it or not is our free will. People often pretend to be someone they're not. And in that case, they're not listening to their destiny. They're using their free will to pretend to be someone that they're not. And after you pretend to be someone you're not for so long, you forget you're pretending. And you don't even have free will anymore. You think you have free will. But you can't because you're pretending and you forgot you're pretending.
And you allude to some of these things that contribute to that as the limiting beliefs, right? So we talk about that in limiting beliefs in your book. So one of the things that I kind of want to pull that curtain back on are these limiting beliefs and what they are, because they are so prevalent. And this is something that we can start off in as individuals and become aware of. What are examples of limiting beliefs?
Examples of limiting beliefs? Well, anything can really be a limiting belief. Like, I'll give you an example. Taught at the university, and one thing that separated me from a lot of the professors, or if not all the professors, is that I was a clinician as well as an academician. So I came from a place of experience when I taught, not just regurgitating what the book was saying.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a real strength, that people really liked having hands-on and demonstrations and seeing how it actually worked rather than just being told how it's supposed to work.
Okay.
But I had a class one time with one student who totally changed that meaning around. She said, oh, he's too busy for his private practice. He can't devote time to teaching class. So she took a positive and turned it into a limitation. And limited other students then because they couldn't see it. Were then vulnerable to seeing it from a different perspective. Now, one of those is true and one of those is not true. And the same thing with learned limitations. Usually they're not true. That's why it's a learned limitation. See, there's also an experiment that was done many years ago. It's called a learned helplessness experiment. And what they did is they put dogs in cages and they shocked them. And the dogs would, of course, try to get out, but there was no way out. And after a while, they would just lay there because they knew they couldn't get out. And then they would open the door to the cage and shock the dog, and the dog would stay in the cage. It had learned that there was no way out, even when there actually was a way out. So that's how learned limitations happen. We are stuck, and then when there is a way out, we don't see it because we're so used to.
Would this be something close? When you were describing that, I always think about, okay, you see things about other individuals, but you can't see the situation for yourself. And I always call that like being too close to the mirror. If your forehead is on a mirror, you can't really see what's going on in a bedroom or a room or whatever room, right? But when you start stepping back from the mirror, it's a totally different perspective and you can see some things, but you're limited in what you can see when you're so close to the situation. Would that be similar to what you're describing?
My initial response is no, that's different.
Okay.
What you're talking about there is kind of context. Context, if I'm a participant, I can't see what's going on as well as when I'm just the observer.
Sure.
But let me make a connection there to what you're saying, that learned limitations kind of work like that. They so dominate our thinking that we no longer can be an observer. Learned limitations create mindsets to where it's like we're always a participant. Yeah. Like as opposed to being able to observe ourselves. Oh, I wonder what I can do. Let me discover my potential here. And how good will I be a month from now, or a week from now, or 2 years from that? Then there are no limitations placed on ourselves.
I like that. So I kind of want to jump over to a different type question, because although we're looking behind the curtain here and you are explaining some things, it is tough sometimes to bridge that gap, because this is what's happening. Bridge the gap between conscious and unconscious. And when you have individuals listening, or even to myself, right? So they're reading your book, Letting Destiny Deliver, or listening to it. And there's a portion that talks about, you don't have to worry. Don't worry if you don't understand the system consciously, because your unconscious can understand, even if your conscious mind does not. So oftentimes, an individual, and this has happened to myself as well, but I pushed through it. But not everybody will. I felt like I didn't quite understand what was happening, and I didn't know if I could I didn't know if I had to educate myself further or something else. But when this sounds like gobbledygook, right, to someone, what can that individual do to assist them in trusting the process? How can they trust the process? How do they know? And how can they know it's working if they're confused?
These are many questions, not just one.
This is true.
Okay. So I'll try to give you one answer that answers many questions.
I like that.
Well, to start off with, we go back to natural causes. Society hasn't failed to incorporate unconscious knowing, awareness, and competencies into our education. So we know nothing about our unconscious mind. We go through our entire lifetimes knowing nothing about it. So what you have instead is a consciousness in a society that's dominated by conscious awareness, which is a different form of awareness. And the conscious mind, which is driven by the ego, sees itself as the smartest, the all-knowing. Okay, and so when it has to deal with things it doesn't understand, it rejects them. Just as we tend to reject people we don't understand. And so here I am basically flooding them with this understanding of this whole other universe of awareness that exists that the conscious mind has no way of perceiving. It's like the air. You can't see it. If we took it away from you, you'd know it.
Yes, you would.
Okay, and you don't think about it until it's gone. And part of why we have problems today is because the practices that come from the unconscious and the knowledge that comes from the unconscious is gone. Just look at the American Indian and the rituals that they would perform, and, the chief dreams would guide the tribe in terms of what they would do. They were driven and made sense of life from these forces. Where today we don't do that at all. We've demystified life. Okay, but we've cheated ourselves of the unconscious is nature within us. We have detached from that nature. Thunder is no longer God's voice, and snakes and mountains don't talk to people anymore. All that's gone. You see, we don't have the Iliad and the Odyssey and those kinds of creations and myths. All things and fairy tales, all things that the unconscious mind produced. We're so far away from that. Now everything has to be tangible, has to be seen, has to be concrete. And so we've lost that awareness, and that's nature within us. And because of that, people suffer mental illness. And the way the news portrays it, they portray mental illness as an individual problem when it's a systemic problem. It's not something you can put an ointment on and it goes away. You really have to do chemotherapy on the entire system. Dr. Maslow, or Abraham Maslow, said 3 things need to be important for somebody to fulfill their genetic code. Social, political, and economic conditions have to be good. And that's not going on. Our social, economic, and political conditions are not good.
Where is the hope in that for an individual?
Letting destiny deliver.
I can say from personal experience, in trusting the process and knowing that it was working, was I could feel a shift within myself, and patterns started to change. Things were changing, and I didn't know why. But I did know I was listening to your voice, reading your book. And so I would say to individuals who are not sure, they can look out for just a change in their behavior, not doing the same old every single day and feeling lighter. That's definitely some of the first shifts I felt. I don't know how common that is because I haven't talked to every single person. But that was my personal experience.
And it's going to be different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And you brought to mind that the reason it's called a prescription is because you have to keep taking it.
That's true.
It's not just a one-time dose. You got to, through repetition. I mean, think about the school system. It's really repetition, year in and year out. They build on it, but you're all the time repeating the same stuff over and over again. You know, children are very repetitive. They do the same. That's how learning occurs, through repetition.
And I really love that you said that, because the final question that I had for you is, how can individuals start applying this for their own personal growth? And it's to continue through. It's continue through as prescribed, and then going back to different sections if needed, or keep going through. That's what I have done. I like the idea of going through all the way through, and then going all the way through again, and then going all the way through again. Although, as prescribed, you mentioned in there that you can go back to whatever section you may need. I like the idea of going through it again, because I gain something different from each chapter every time I go through it. So I do think it's important to go all the way through. That's my personal opinion.
The way it works. See, one of the things you do by listening to it and then going back to it is you give your unconscious the information. The unconscious mind then cooks the information. So then when you go back to it consciously, yes, you hear different things. You have new insights or thoughts about what you're hearing, because you now have it, cooked better. So, and you can repeat that process over and over again. Get new learning, the unconscious cooks it. You go back to the material, you go, oh, it's like reading any book for a second time, or seeing a movie for a second or third time, or seeing it 10 years later. The unconscious is a silent partner, but a very powerful partner. It goes unrecognized, unfortunately. And so, to kind of put the punctuation mark on it, it makes everything for people so much harder, the way they're oriented today, because they think they have to do everything consciously. And really, we are much more competent when we do things unconsciously, when we do them automatically without having to think about them. But because we do everything consciously, two things happen. One, there are certain things the conscious mind can't do. The ears can't see. The eyes can't hear. A lot of functions the conscious mind can't do that we need to do unconsciously. And by trying to do it consciously, like going to sleep, you can't will yourself to sleep. And what you do is you fall asleep. And the way you fall asleep is by stop trying to go to sleep, letting it happen all by itself. Okay, and so it's much easier if you let things happen by itself, trusting your unconscious. And so before, and what can individuals do? They get the framework, hey, there is this force within me, this agent that's powerful. I need to start a relationship with it, and begin to develop a knowledge of that and a trust of that process.
Would it be fair to say that letting Destiny deliver is a roadmap that you've developed to allow individuals to return to themselves and reach their full potential?
That is exactly what it is and was intended to be.
Yeah, I definitely feel that.
And just for the record, that my dissertation in terms of teaching students how to use both their conscious and unconscious mind in their academics did increase their GPA. It did enhance their academic performance
Well, this is good to know.
at a statistically significant level.
That is good to know. Okay, well, if you don't have anything else to add, we're going to wrap this up for our first ever session on Behind the Curtain of Letting Destiny Deliver. Thank you all. See you next time.